Okay, I know it goes without saying, but if you have a cell phone that you haven't silenced, we did hear some good music during the last meeting, but seriously, just out of respect for everybody, it's not a huge showstopper, but when you leave for lunch, a lot of times we all turn our phones back on, so let's do that. I don't know unless there's any objections from my peers. I just think that the next likely person I'd like to bring to the podium is Mr. Bosey. His name was said, maybe in vain, multiple times, but I know we really respect his position and everything he has to say when it comes to analysis. So, Mr. Bosey, we're all ears.
Thank you, Chair. Mike Bosey, Planning and Zoning Director. Just put on the record, the petition has been reviewed by all the individual departments and divisions, transportation, utilities, environmental, a lot of the things that were mentioned. Staff is recommending approval on both the growth management plan and the request for the commercial PUD or mixed-use PUD. It was a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission, 4-2. I think the earlier presenters highlighted the two objectors, what they were looking for. From staff's perspective, there was a lot of things that were put on the presentations attributing what was the allowed density, or wasn't allowed density. There must have been some some confusion during our discussions, because some of the numbers that were attributed weren't correct, but that's quite all right. They're not looking to utilize the provisions of the growth management plan. They're submitting a growth management plan amendment to allow for the density that's being requested, as well as the 22.6% affordable housing. One of the things that I would like to let the commission know that right across Airport Road, there's the Longview PUD. In the Longview PUD, and this is just in terms of overall height and consistency, the Longview Center PUD allows for an actual height of 62 feet. So what the statements were that if you allowed 60 feet, you were going to be 40% above what currently built. That may be the case, but the prior board has already established that 62 feet is the inappropriate height within this area. Another of an attribute that was a statement that was attributed to me was this area is not an activity center. And I agree, this area is not an activity center. But what I've also said is this activity or this area functions like an activity center. There's four corners. There's four corners within this intersection. None of them are residential. None of them are residential. One of them allows 62 feet of actual height. So I don't disagree, though, that there's residential properties to the north and to the west and to the south. Interesting, if you look down at the Bear Creek PUD, that was developed in the 90s as an affordable housing program. It was allocated at 14 units an acre, the highest allowed outside of an activity center. So the county has already looked at this intersection and has in the past deemed it appropriate for affordable housing. And one of the reasons why I believe that is a decision or that was made is because of the number of employment opportunities that are within this local area. If you look to the north, there's an activity center at Orange Blossom, not Orange Blossom, but Airport Road in Vanderbilt. If you look to the south, below Bear Creek, you've got another development, Arbor Walk. That was an affordable housing development as well, developed at 12 units an acre. Below that is an industrial plaza, and below that is another activity center. So the number of job opportunities within the localized area are prevalent. And one of the things that we're trying to promote with the addition of affordable housing, we're not going to reduce the traffic because we're adding more units. But what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the trip length. And the location has everything to do with that. The location of having a prevalence of jobs within a close proximity towards where the affordable housing location is, the logical conclusion is there will be a reduction in the overall trips that will need to be traveled. I've said it to this Board of County Commissioners a number of times. We import 45,000 people a day to fill the economic needs of this county. They drive from outside the county towards wherever their workplace or destination is and back. Those are long trip lengths. What we're trying to do is allow to shorten some of those, a percentage of those, and we feel that this has the opportunity to provide for a community benefit within the provision. There's been a lot made of 206, which is in our land development code. That table that they kept referring to is not a growth management plan provision. That is the implementation arm of the policies to promote affordable housing that's contained within your growth management plan. But one of the problems that we've seen within 206 is it was originally developed in the 1990s as part of a tax credit program for the true affordable housing providers who look for tax credits as well as other subsidies to help buy down the cost. The proposal that is being put forward today is for a market rate provider of housing. They can also set aside a provision for affordable housing, but affordable housing is not their main game. They don't work in the tax credit system. They just work and try to allow for their units that are market rate to buy down and pay for the cost of the affordable units. Another aspect that I wanted to point out, and it's been stated here a couple times, and I just wanted to remind the board, the growth management plan is not a static document. It was adopted in 1989, and it's not the same document that was adopted in 89. It's been amended hundreds of times because it's been adopted hundreds of times because it's got concepts and principles that we're trying to obtain. And when we find that the land use arrangement that's provided for within our growth management plan or our land development code is not yielding the results that those policies are trying to promote, we amend it. We amend it internally. We also allow the private development side to amend it. We understand that the marketplace understands what there is in terms of an overall need. They submitted a growth management plan amendment. We analyzed the data analysis that are provided for. We make an evaluation, provide those factors to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the board, and the Board of County Commissioners makes a determination if they feel it's appropriate to amend the growth management plan. So it's not a great exception that's being proposed. In the last 3 years, we have set aside close to 2,500 units that are dedicated to affordable housing. The majority of those were set aside through the growth management plan amendment process. So this is something the Board of County Commissioners has routinely done to advance affordable housing in the right locations. And we do feel that this is the right location because the focus of this project is going to be directed towards Airport Road, a 6-lane divided highway that we feel has the capacity to be able to accept the impacts of the traffic and the impacts of the intensity of this project focused towards that road and not focused towards Orange Blossom. So for a lot of those individual reasons, and I have Cormac Giblin here as well as Mike Sawyer from the Transportation Department, Trinity Scott. If you had any questions about any of those disciplines, they can most certainly come up, and staff would entertain any questions that you may have related to the project.
Plenty of questions. Go ahead, Commissioner Saunders. I can see you reaching.
Yeah, just a couple for clarification. What is permitted there right now in terms of the maximum number of units they could build on that parcel, just the way it is right now? Or units per acre, I guess.
Well, 1 unit per 5 acres. It's ag.
So, okay. So they would be able to build, is it 4 units? They've got a little over 20 acres there with everything combined.
The one parcel that's zoned that is 10 acres by itself right now, they could develop 2 houses per the current zoning.
They're including more property into the application. So would that be 3 then?
Well, it depends on how much. I mean, if you're talking about 15, then you could have 3 because it's 1 to 5. It's a very low.
Even I can handle that math.
Yeah. Yes.
Just trying to find out how many units they have.
But there's.
Property. All right, so if we approved a project there with an affordable housing component, what are some of the benefits in terms of upping the density that they could get? I realize that we can pretty much do what we want in terms of density, but just from a staff perspective, or just informing me, if they were able to rezone this and get density bonus points and affordable housing bonus, what are the numbers of units that they could get in addition?
So if you're asking me what was the maximum number of units that they could get without a GMP amendment?
Correct.
They would be entitled to a base of 4. They have a residential infill bonus of 3 units per acre as well. We have an affordable housing bonus opportunity for 12 additional units, but because this is outside of an activity center, the future land use map and the density radius system would cap them below 16 units an acre. It would be basically 15 units an acre.
So they could get 15 units an acre. And is this on the 10 acres we're talking about? Because there's been some discussion about 150 units.
It's on the 10 acres, yes. Yeah, yes.
That's all. I just wanted some clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see where my questions are. Most of these are sort of statements based on what other people have said. And Mr. Bose, you've answered my questions on traffic and trip lengths. Let me see if. What did you repeat again what you said about, we heard some folks come up here and said, oh my gosh, if it's above 42 feet, impossible, crazy, disaster. And I'm summarizing, or paraphrasing it improperly, but you said something where you said, not so fast, Commissioner. There actually have been some changes that have happened that don't make this such a giant leap. Say it properly with what your area of expertise is.
The southeast corner of Airport Blossom or Airport Road in Orange Blossom, the southeast corner of that intersection allows for an actual height of 62 feet. So that establishes the maximum height that's...
Nothing's there that's 62 feet, but it could be.
That parcel's undeveloped, hasn't been developed yet. The expectation would be that they would get close to 62 feet. That is permitted.
I mean, one thing I will say to those citizens, and I might be a little bit out of order, out of sequence here, but we had something similar, to this on Isles of Capri, not the same, but a contentious issue that either people wanted nothing, or they wanted commercial, or they wanted something sort of in the middle. And the reality is, I always say there's no vacant land in Collier County. There's only undeveloped land. The only thing that's vacant is the Everglades, and so everything else is undeveloped. You've answered my question about the height, but I remember, not going back in time to Isles of Capri, but I remember a lot of citizens coming up here and going, well, if you approve this condo unit at a certain height, then basically you've opened up the floodgates and every single person now is going to get gigantic units. And we all sat up here and said that's preposterous. We vote on everything separately. So if something is 50 feet, it doesn't mean that that's the new standard, even though citizens might think that. I think we've said no to plenty of things up here that had other things in the area. So everything stands on its own. We look at traffic, we look at water, we look at density, we look at population, we look at the schools and all those other things. So, that to me is something that doesn't hold a lot of water. We're in here deciding on this one particular thing. So I realize there's other tracts of land, but I don't think anybody up here is going to say, well, we've set that precedent, so everything's going to be now 60 feet or higher. I mean, we've proven that in this room, and maybe not with the people that are in here now, so they haven't had the benefit of sort of hearing, what we've heard on other things we voted on, but it's fact. I'm glad to hear that there was, and this is where maybe more of these are statements, that there was good NIM participation, even though it sounded like it was probably contentious and not extremely positive. I always say, the beauty of NIMs is you want to go in there and try to negotiate a bit. Maybe there was some of that. Obviously the landowner and developer made some changes, so that was good. The gentleman that spoke first, you don't need to come up to the podium, but some notes I made here while you were speaking, and you said you represent a very large group. And first of all, thank you so much for your professional well thought out, eloquent comments. Whoever picked you as the spokesperson, that's what you want to do in here. So the 15 people that all said, I don't want to speak on the microphone, I'm scared and I'm not great. I might even do that. But that's what you want to do, one person. So if anybody's watching this, when we get through all of this, 30 people all telling us we're stupid and we're ruining their community is not the same as one gentleman coming up here going, we're trying to find balance. And I'm representing a lot of people. But a couple things that I did write down. And you said you're representing a large group that aren't trying to put nothing there. You're not that, I don't want to say like naive or that short-sighted. You realize something is going to go there. You are supportive of affordable housing and the needs for it. But what I would tell you is you're not up here representing everybody because we got, and you know that, but we got hundreds of emails that sounded just like this, okay? And here's the email. I won't read the person's name, but my colleagues got these exact emails from tons of people that must not be in your group. I strongly oppose the Haven Affordable Housing Project. This will have a major negative impact on our community. Now, when I read those, great, I love citizen input, but this is total NIMBY, not in my backyard. Because if you were in here 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, we had people in here with pitchforks, sharpening their pitchforks and with lit torches all telling us we're stupid because there's a huge affordable housing issue in Collier County and we've done nothing about it. But then the minute we try to do something in somebody's neighborhood, then you get 300 emails like this that say, well, yeah, I want you to do something about it, but build it out in Immokalee behind a bunch of redwood trees that nobody can see. And that's not realistic as well. So, you didn't say anything wrong or anything that was without merit. But I will tell you, we're the only ones up here that really heard from everybody, and everybody didn't represent your position. There were people that sent us one email and said, I do not want enough. I got an email from somebody that said, the reason why I don't want the Haven is because we all have very expensive, beautiful homes, and these affordable housing projects come in and wreck our community and lower our property values. And the last sentence was almost verbatim, find another place for it. And that's not realistic in here. And I'm not saying we're going to shoehorn or force feed it in there, but that's some of the feedback. So sometimes when people hear us vote and wonder why that vote was so stupid to them, there's plenty of stimuli we get from the local community that have other options or other ideas. The lady that was up here and was also very eloquent, but said, and it's the young lady that used to work for the county here. I think we all recognize her and appreciate her expertise. But one thing I will disagree with is adding affordable housing does increase density and it does increase revenue. But the way it was presented here is, wow, that greedy developer. We are in here mandating affordable housing. So if this developer came up here and was naive enough to say, we don't want to put any affordable housing here, this meeting would be very short because I guarantee you my colleagues would jump on it and say, look, I've been yelled at for the last 2 years that we have no affordable housing in Collier County. People are sleeping in their cars, how stupid we were to not pass the 60-day rental ordinance, and we have no compassion for affordable housing. Affordable housing is in this project because this developer knows if they don't put it in there, we're going to make them put it in there. So it's not a matter of, and this is my own perspective. I'm curious to hear from my colleagues, but it's not because they sharpened their pencil, got new batteries for their calculator and said, wow, how can we squeeze more money out of this project? We're making them do that. And so it has to be part of almost every project. Not every project, but almost every one. So, spinning it on the other way and making it sound like, it's another greedy developer who's just looking for more density and is, squeezing or sneaking affordable housing in there. Oh, trust me, if they don't put it in there, we're going to make them in most cases. Crash rates. Okay, I'm dealing with this a lot in my district. Just because there's a ton of accidents at a very busy intersection where a lot of people have crashes doesn't mean that we won't add more development there. If Sheriff Rambosk was here, crash rates mean a whole bunch of things. It might mean that this community has a bunch of unsafe drivers who are impatient and are trying to cross 6 lanes and not make a right-hand turn and make a safe U-turn. Maybe they, have to get a kid to school or do whatever. But, when somebody tries to connect for our decision, wow, there's really a lot of crashes there. I mean, that's not a reason for us to say, okay, then we won't put any more development there. If we didn't add development in places that just had a lot of accidents, then you might as well put a lock on that door and we're done in Collier County building anything. And on the flip side is I would love to dive in with our traffic experts on that, because when we have areas where there's a lot of crashes or unsafe, we had stop signs, we had more, we get with FDOT, we had more street lights, we had more turn lanes, we make streets wider, we do all kinds of things. We had more crosswalks, we do, so that's sort of like an apples and chairs kind of thing, that if the connection is, well, it's so dangerous at that intersection now, it doesn't make me look at this project and say, well, then all the remaining vacant land, undeveloped land in this district has to stay that way, because we can't, put anything else into it. And then, lastly, I'll just say there were several people that were talking about what a disaster. I actually wrote it down verbatim. One or two people said it's such a disaster in this location right now because of density, population, traffic, crashes, and all of that. But when I look at the proposal that was made, I sit here and go, wow, just lowering the project by 50 units, 100 units, 90 units is going to make such a gigantic, if it's such a disaster, we should maybe shut down some of the apartment complexes that are down there, because it seems like it's unsafe with what's down there now. And, I'm being a little bit, facetious and partially sarcastic, but really to make the point that, the proposal of, a few less affordable units and a few of this, I mean, that to me is negligible. I mean, either it's a total disaster and this project does not belong on that property at all, and it needs to be something totally different, or the small little changes here and there. I mean, yeah, every car matters, but I mean, I don't think sitting here going, well, instead of 76 units, we're okay with 60. That reminds me of just sitting here trying to negotiate the purchase of a car. Well, I'll pay 45, but I'll offer 35, and maybe they'll take 37. And, we're trying to make bigger strategic decisions here than that. So I look at the proposal, and I appreciate citizens trying to get it down to the smallest possible acceptable level. But in my eyes, the difference between what I see as the smallest acceptable level, at least to the largest group that's represented here, and what's being presented, to me, is negligible. It's not gonna put 10,000 less cars on the road. It's not gonna make that kind of gigantic impact. And to me, also, the 4 stories, one of the things I'd ask Mr. Bosie, and maybe this is a question, I sit here, and when I look at height, I got emails from some people that I don't even think when they look outside of any window of their home will actually be able to see this building. Yet they wrote me a 1.5-page email talking about how the height is totally going to ruin the community. And I'm not saying they don't leave their house, but this is your area of expertise. I'm hearing from you that the difference between 3 stories and 4 stories in the big strategic landscape of this area is negligible or not a factor. And there again, much like for the Isles of Capri issue, where I caught a lot of spears, and even people did here, it was after every single department in the county recommended the decision that we unanimously made. I'm hearing the same thing here. After all of your analysis and traffic and everything, every department of the county is recommending that we approve this, correct, as is?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And then, the first part of my question was, if it was 4 stories, with your analysis looking at the entire landscape and sort of taking sort of the personalization that a lot of times citizens have, and that does have merit, so I'm not discounting that, but we also have to look at the strategic landscape. Is it so egregious that going from 42 to 60 feet does something that we really, really need to take a second look at?
There is a concept in the field of planning, and it's based upon graduation in the gradual increase or decrease of intensity and height. And related to intensity, related to density, and intensity related to height, this is an appropriate way in which the planning field would treat it. At your corner, in your most intense area, because like I said, at these 4 intersections, it's non-residential. So that's your most intense uses. You would have your highest intensity of density, intensity of use, and intensity of height. As you pull that back, you would step down. You'd step down to a 40-foot Carlisle. You would step down to a 2 or 3 story multifamily of Bear Creek apartments. From the 60 feet down to 42 feet down to the single family. That's a normal transition within an urban area. This is squarely within the urban area of Collier County. You would expect to have buildings 3 and 4 stories within this type of an environment. It's one of the reasons I believe why across the street there is a PUD that allows 62 feet in height, because of its urban location, because of where it sits within the corner of an intersection of two minor and major collector roads, and the concept of stepping down the height and the density is within this component. And as you get further away from that intersection, the height and the density decreases.
My last comment is going to be about the growth management plan. We have the Golden Gate Master Plan, which we use as a very stringent guideline. Growth management plan, falls in sort of that same category. Obviously, in District 1 right now, we've got the East Naples overlay, which is going to be sort of like our growth management plan, so to speak, if it's approved, basically giving guidelines. But as somebody said here, and I'll finish sort of the quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again. Some of these plans are quite dated, and I don't know that we had as many people sleeping in their cars and who needed affordable housing. And it's not just the nurses and the firefighters. Actually, I hear from people in my community that say, stop talking about the nurses and firefighters. The nurse at NCH makes a pretty good wage. My husband's an out-of-work mechanic, and I'm a waitress at 2 different restaurants. We're the people that you need to, sort of focus on. And when you see even the reduced rates for affordable housing, this is an expensive place to live. These aren't units that are going to be $400 a month, but we got to do something. So I know a lot of times when a community doesn't want something, they immediately throw up the growth management plan. Commissioner Saunders is very used to the Golden Gate Master Plan, and that has merit, that has value, no question. There are times where we throw that up and we vote against something because we think it's so egregiously going to conflict with a plan. But also too, as you said, Mr. Bosey, unless I misunderstood you, we have deviated at times for the plan when it made sense, and I think we have to have that latitude, that smarts, that forward thinking to adjust to a community that isn't the same as it was in 1983 or 93 or 73. And I don't want to have the definition of insanity, which is, well, we just keep doing the same thing, and then once we feel like the balloon is inflated, then we just back off and go, hey, we can't do anything anymore. We've got some serious issues out there. One of the things I did like about this plan was the aggressiveness of the affordable housing. And yeah, does it put money in the developer's pocket? Well, whatever they build there is going to do that. But I can tell you, if the developer came to this podium and didn't mention affordable housing, I got news for you. We'd all be stepping over each other, trying to say, wait a minute, this is in the nerve center of Naples. There are some places where affordable housing doesn't make sense, but you hit the nail on the head with the shorter trips. And I will tell you also, we also got a lot of emails that came sort of later in the game, but to my colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong, from business people who said, don't miss an opportunity to do something there. And I appreciate what the gentleman said at the beginning that spoke very eloquently and said, hey, we're not naive enough to stand up here and just say, the county should buy it and turn it into a park. We've heard that before. But the reality is this is a major nerve center, a major nucleus of Naples, and it was brought to our attention by a lot of business owners who are salivating over something going there. And to the residents' credit here, I don't think anybody in this room is saying please put nothing there and dismissed. It's finding that right algorithm. I got every commissioner lit up. Obviously, I want to hear from everyone, especially Commissioner Hall, because I think he's probably burned the most hours on this, has heard from more people than all of us have, but I know that our inboxes have been full. Actually going to, for the first time in a while, I'm going to go a little bit out of order, only because I do want to hear from Commissioner Hall, and he's lit up here second. So Commissioner Hall, we'll hear from you, and Commissioner Colwell, you're on deck, and then Commissioner McDaniel. So Commissioner Hall, over to you.
Great. First of all, I want to say thanks to Mr. Renner. He did a great job. Just like Chairman commented, it's not that this neighborhood is not looking for anything. They understand that growth is going to happen. And I like the creativity of this deal. I like the fact that they, has joined forces with the Carlisle, and that they increase their acreage to get their density to ask. It's a beautiful rendering. I appreciate the fact that they tried to make some concessions at the NIMS. CPC, or the Planning Commission and staff, they're all for this. The AHAC is for it because they're all excited about the affordable house. There's 76 units that can be affordable, and they're all excited about that. You know, our comp plan was designed a while ago, but it was also designed around the road capacities. We have more property to develop. We don't have any more property for our roads. The roads were designed per the plan, and this project being allowable is evident. But whether it's desirable is the question. I've spent a lot of time since a candidate at these meetings with this alliance, and they've been well organized. They've been well thought out. They don't want the project, and it's not because it's a NIMBY. It's not because, I mean, I read those emails, and there were some like that, but the majority of the emails that I got and the majority of the feedback from the public, from 4,000 households, that's a lot of people in District 2. And they don't want the project because they don't want the height and they don't want the density. So the Carlisle being included, the Carlisle's not going to add anything to this project. Yes, in this PUD, they're proposing to bring the Carlisle up to current standards with their square foot ratio, but the Carlisle can stand alone on that. The way I look at this is a 336 unit complex that's wanting to be put on 10 acres. You can add PUDs, you can do everything you want to, but there's a 10-acre spot of land there that's where the property's going. That's 33 units an acre. I don't care how else you split it up. You can say, well, we got 15 acres and it's 25. Well, we got 27 acres in the PUD. It's only 12 units an acre. What reality is it's 336 units going on a 10-acre piece of land. And understanding that, I ran with an understanding that my role was to protect and secure the rights of the citizens. I like the project. They don't. It's not my decision whether I like it or not. It's their decision. I represent them. Their message has been loud. Their message has been clear. And so I also ran on smart growth. And there's nobody in the room and I also ran on affordable housing. That's a big thing with me. But knowing that it's still a 336 unit on a 10-acre plat, and the affordability thing to me is a carrot. It's an effort. It's a showing of, yes, we care and we want to provide that. But it's a carrot to get 266 more units of market rate homes to put on that 10-acre spot. The Bible says with faith and patience we inherit the promises. So I'm willing to put my faith out there that there's somebody else that's willing to build more affordable units on that 10 acres. And I'm willing to be a little bit more patient about it. So with those thoughts, I'm going to oppose this project based on what the people have wanted, and be patient enough to think that there's somebody else that's going to come along there and put more affordable units on there. By state statute, if we deem this commercial at some point in time, the law says they have to have at least 40% affordable homes. So by rights, if somebody had it and you gave them 7 units an acre, plus you gave them a 6-unit bonus for affordable housing, that's 13 units an acre for a total amount of 130 acres. That's not a burdensome thing I don't even care if it was 4 feet or 4 stories. That's really not my issue. My issue is strictly the density of it. And it is going to. District 2 has the most traffic in the county. And if you drive District 2, I know Commissioner McDaniel does because he comes in from the east all the time. It's busy. It's congested. It's heavy. And it's getting that way through the summer. There's really not a big break between season and the summer like there used to be. So just for be able to add to it just because we can and it's allowable and we can change the code or we can change the growth plan, I'm not sure that's the smartest thing to do. When if we could just remain a little bit patient, we'll get some affordable homes in there, and that's a prime spot. So I've said enough, but I'm going to oppose the deal.
Commissioner Cole.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Bosey, you answered a couple of my questions already because I was curious with the growth management plan when it took adoption. I guess it was 1989, and I know we've just through attrition and through just our growth, just the natural growth of this community, we've had to make amendments to that, and I know we all have been faced over the last several years. I know I had in my previous career with the Sheriff's Department and retention of good people and retention of recruitment, and that we've been facing a housing issue for at least 10 years. So probably longer than a majority of the people in the county have actually noticed it over the last few years. And that makes sense because, if you stick to some of these older plans, these older growth development plans, and, it doesn't entice people to take their personal money and their private money and invest it, to fix this problem. And the problem's grown because nobody wants to invest their money, into something that's not going to be profitable for them in the end. I mean, that's how our market and that's how our country's built, through, people investing their own money and into the market and expecting some sort of demand or some sort of return on their investment. So, I just want to revisit. I know we asked this question earlier, and I didn't get a, this particular property is zoned ag, right?
Correct.
Okay. And I heard some of the people that are concerned about the property or this project, wishing it would be possibly a commercial developer come in and possibly ask for a change to a commercial. I've heard that several times.
I think what they were alluring to was the Luckert rezone, which is
That was one of my other
parcel.
questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's one parcel up. It's being scheduled. It's actually scheduled for the June 1st Planning Commission meeting, but the board meeting has not been determined.
So I'll just go to that then. So we have the Luckert, which is just directly north of this project, which is already zoned one of the C1, C2, or C3, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So July 1, when our Live Local Act kicks in, that the governor passed, that basically handcuffs us on making any decisions in the future by right, could Luckert sell this to somebody else? And what could they possibly build on that piece of property?
The way that
Take into consideration the school board building, which is within 1 linear mile of there. Anybody know the height of the school board building?
it's at least 8 stories.
Okay.
The Senate Bill 102 allows for the highest density allowed in a residential project within the county, as well as the highest structure, commercial or residential, within a mile of this area. So the highest residential zoning that's allowed is contained within the mini triangle mixed-use PUD. It allows residential at 92 units an acre. And if you can go up to 8 stories, if there's an 8-story structure within a mile of the Luckert project, they could develop at 92 units an acre at 80, 85 feet, whatever the highest structure would be. And you don't have a right to deny that. That would be simply an administrative application that would go to our site development plan process. They would have to satisfy the parking, water management, all the other criteria but if they've got a good engineering and architectural firm, they'll be able to satisfy those. And as long as they can satisfy every component of the land development code, then that SDP can be approved.
Okay. So we mentioned the lot on the northeast corner of Orange Blossom and Airport, and you'd said that is already possibly approved for a 62-foot?
It's approved for mixed use, for commercial use or for a church use. It's either or.
So that's also a commercial lot?
Both of those, the north on the northeast and the north in the southeast, both of those could be exercised from the Live Local Act as well, because they are commercially zoned.
You could have another 80-some foot building with 92 units per acre on that corner, and we wouldn't have any say in that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How about the lot to the southeast corner, which I believe is a nursery there now? You know what that's zoned?
I believe it's commercial.
Okay.
And because with the commercial, it's the same allotment would be provided for.
I guess where I'm going with this is, I just don't, I'm not one of them kind of guys, I like to go to Vegas because I like to gamble to a point. I don't like to gamble. And, you know, I'm trying to look at the picture down the road that what that corner could look like by law and by right. And none of us up here can do anything about it. And there's a chance that that lot that we're talking about right now could ask for a commercial conversion. Like I've heard some people in here asking, and if they decide not to go with the commercial building, they could also take advantage of the by right, correct?
That'll be for the next 10 years, because that's how long the Senate Bill 102 is set for. You're always going to have to think in the back of your mind, any request to go to commercial, industrial, or mixed use could, at any time, if they were approved for the zoning, would have that ability to exercise the rights that are provided to them by the Florida statute.
I guess I'm just trying to put something out here just to let people look at this outside of a box looking in, that what possibly could happen if you don't let this project happen. It could end up just being like the other three corners that are on your intersection. And in a way, maybe this would protect you from having a fourth building in your neighborhood. I don't know, but I'm torn on this right now, and I'm trying to find a good reason to where I'm going to make a decision which way I'm going to go. But I had to bring this up and let everybody understand that this project might be a blessing, not a curse. So that's basically answered my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner, yes, sir.
Guys, I did have a conversation yesterday. If we did get to this property and did rezone it commercially, even with the Live Local Act, we could do it with conditional use, limiting the height and the density for all affordable housing. So we have that leeway. It's not like we're just stuck. We're stuck with anything that's zoned commercial right now or as of July the 1st. But if we decide to do it commercial for that reason, we have some leeway in that.
Commissioner McDaniel.
I had a couple of questions. And from just a operational standpoint, do you think we ought to hear from the applicant again?
Oh, absolutely.
Who would be- Okay. Who's in charge of the oversight of the affordable housing units and the checks and balances that I didn't want to skip over the applicant having an opportunity to rebut and talk about what's in fact transpiring, but I did have a couple of questions of staff. So, hey, Cormac, are you the one in charge of the oversight with regard to the affordability aspect of this?
Sure, I can take the question. Cormac Giblin, Planning Manager, for the record. When it comes to monitoring, there is a two-tier process in place for these types of commitments. One is as part of their normal annual PUD monitoring that takes place over at Growth Management. On the anniversary date of their PUD approval, they have to submit all of their monitoring, and they'll be reporting to the county on everything from housing commitment, environmental, traffic, any other commitments that are in the PUD. There's an annual report that they submit to the county that's then verified. The second tier is when we're talking specifically about affordable housing commitments. There's a separate monitoring team over in the Public Services Division, over in the Housing and Human Service, Community and Human Services Division, headed up by Christy Sontag, the director, who they then go a step further than the normal PUD monitoring and do a deep dive with on-site file examinations of all of the commitments on the housing side that the development has committed to. So the details are in the PUD, and then they monitored on a two-tier system, at least yearly.
Okay. Are you okay with that? Christy's standing behind you there. She's the one that's going to have to go out and actually physically monitor this.
Christy Sontag, Community and Human Services Director. Yes, Commissioner, we're fine with it. We have a schedule where all of the commitments that y'all have made over the years, we monitor them on an annual basis. And as Cormac explained, it's a two-party process that we do. We do a pre-monitoring because some of the developments aren't developed, and then we do an actual on-site monitoring where there's quite a list of criteria that we go through to examine. We look at income, we look at if there's an essential service personnel, is there a certification that they are an essential service worker? Do they have fair housing policies? We look at a variety of items, and I can certainly share that with the board if they'd like.
Okay. There were, and this may be for Mr. Bosey, there were several comments made by the Planning Commission, and I think I read in here that the adherences to those recommendations are already included in adjustments by the applicant with regard to the development itself.
Yes.
Size, density, so on and so forth. Okay. And then my last comment would be, and this is maybe when we get to the applicant standpoint, I would like to see, if this project in fact goes forward, I would like to see more of a firm commitment on the types of affordable units that are there, of bedrooms, as to how many are going to be 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. That's all.
Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Saunders.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Jovanovich a question or two. And this may require him to talk to his client while we're having other people speaking. It seems to me that there's a general understanding from the community that 3 stories is not a problem. That we're really talking about height here, not necessarily the number of units, but we're really talking about the height. And so, for you, my question for you and for your client is, if we limited this to 3 stories, I don't know how many units you could get on 3 stories. So that would be one question. How many units can you actually physically build in a project that was 3 stories instead of 4? I think that gets us somewhere between a denial potentially and the 4 stories that is proposed. So I'm just posing that question to you. Perhaps you could talk to your client, just see if that's something that may be a compromise position to think about. I know you've said that the project's not economically viable unless it has 336 units and it's 4 stories, but I'm not so sure I would agree with that. But I've never built a building. I know Commissioner Hall has been involved in those construction matters, and his view would be very significant, but I'm just kind of winging it here, seeing if there's some compromise position to be in.
I'm going to have to take a break before.
Yeah, and I'm not asking you to make any kind of a statement now, because you may have 4 votes. I'm just trying to get you to think about
I understand it.
in the event that you don't.
What I would say is, since all the commissioners have at least asked their first round of questions, then I was going to call you back, so you're in the right spot now. The floor is yours. You've heard a lot of comments back and forth, a lot of numbers thrown around, and different things. So as Commissioner McDaniel was saying, we want to hear from the applicant in response to a lot of those things, or maybe any new information that you have.
Well, I wish, Troy, is there a way to pull, or how do I pull the presentation back up just so I can go to our site plan real quick? Thank you. That'll actually work. That's perfect. Can you see, is the visual, or your monitor, thanks. I just want to, I hate to use the word correct, but I can't think of a different word right now as to what's the real size of the proposed project. It's not a 10-acre piece. It's really a 15-acre piece, because all we're really buying from the Carlisle is their access road. So we really have 15 acres on which we're putting this project. Obviously, we have water management, lakes, and all of that. So it's really a 15-acre piece versus a 10-acre piece. So I think the fair way to look at the density per acre is the 23 units per acre, because even the residents were saying, we want you to look at this as it's a 14 plus or minus acre parcel, that's 23 units per acre, which is right in the density that you guys have recently transmitted to the state to change your affordable housing process, because the matrix doesn't work. The matrix won't even let us get a bonus for anything rental above 80% AMI. So even under, I don't even qualify for what Diane Flagg said was 10 units per acre, because 10% of my units are above 80% AMI. Now, several people said, you know, what's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? I've been here since 1990. This matrix has been in place since I was a young assistant county attorney, and the same matrix has been there, and it doesn't work. You haven't had a tax credit project come forward in Collier County since I don't know when. I think Bear Creek may have been approved when I was still here in 1994. You had a couple on the East Trail. So the matrix doesn't work, and you've recognized that because your transmitted changes to this to get to the potential of 25 units per acre for affordable housing. So I think we're consistent with what you're talking about. I think what's getting lost, and I think Mike did a great job of talking about what's approved in this area, what businesses are there, but you've received letters from employers who have been begging you for years to help solve this problem. You got a letter from NCH saying they have people driving between 45 minutes and 90 minutes to get here. They support this project. They see these 76 units as truly beneficial. The Chamber of Commerce has sent a letter of support. The school, Stephanie Lucarelli with the school board has said, we need this. And she gave her own personal story about wanting it for her own son who's now here working. I want it for my kids. Sunshine Ace Hardware, Michael Wynn has sent a letter of support. You have several letters of support from employers saying, we got a problem, we got to do something about it, and we are doing something about it. I appreciate Commissioner Hall's faith that something better is going to come along. It hasn't come along in 33 years since I've been here. I've done one project that actually used the matrix because they only needed a very small density bonus to make that work. So it's not working. I think what you have, I know what you have, is you have a project that, yes, it's creative because it needed to be creative. In order to get affordable housing done in today's market with the cost of construction, the cost of borrowing money, is you've got to be creative and you've got to look for solutions that work. You've heard from every one of your experts. Trinity with transportation, they have signed off. Transportation is not an issue. Mike, from a planning standpoint, all of his people have signed off. You have businesses begging for this. This is a Class A project. Class A project. We can address the mixture of units, Commissioner McDaniel, about, and let me verify what I'm about to say, because I think I got this right. We will commit that 22% of the one bedrooms, 22% of the two bedrooms, and 23% of the three bedrooms will be income restricted. So it will be spread out throughout all of the different unit types instead of it being, all ones. Because people said we're just going to do all ones. We'll spread that out through all of the different categories, which I think there's testimony that we need all three of those categories, housing in that category. We're willing to take that risk that we'll find somebody who will want to rent the three bedrooms, and the risk that someone will want to rent the two bedrooms to address family needs, because families need this too. It's not just the single person moving here looking for housing or living here looking for housing.
So did I hear you say 66% of?
No, 22% of each unit type. So we're going to do 22.6 across the board,
Okay.
but we'll spread out whatever that math works out to. So not 66 point whatever. If I said that, no.
Okay.
I didn't mean that. Now you got me flustered. No, I'm kidding, but I don't know a kind way of saying what I'm about to say, so I'm just going to say it. You got 4,000 homes in this area. Not a single one of us contributing to the affordable housing. That entire group isn't participating in solving the problem by providing affordable housing. They are opposing 76 units that's on the outskirts of their community on a 6-lane road that everybody says is a good project, is a good need, and will help. That's a staggering number of homes that I guarantee you probably generate the need for 76 affordable housing units just on their own. But they don't want to help. And I get what they're saying. They're saying we're not opposed to affordable housing, but they want to put in restrictions on the amount of units. That means we can't build affordable housing on the site. That's really what's happening. Is they're not saying they're against it, but they're putting impositions on it that will result in no affordable housing being on this site. This is a good project. This is what your affordable housing committee wants. This is what your business community wants. This is what the residents of Collier County wants. And I guarantee you the 4 or 5 that are watching me today and how this is going are going to be really nervous if this one doesn't go through, whether or not to continue with theirs. And the Ascend project on Vanderbilt Beach Road that they're talking about, like, hey, this is a slam dunk that's going to get approved. You haven't been to the NIMS I've been to for projects that are affordable housing projects in Golden Gate Estates where the Ascend project is located. So I'm very passionate about this. I really think we need to do something. And I think my client is willing to do a very, very good project. Your staff is supporting it. Your planning commission is supporting it. And it'll be a shame if this one doesn't go, because I think others won't go as well, because the message I hear every time is, I love the mission, I hate the location. It's never the right location when we're doing projects like affordable housing. This is a 23 unit per acre project, which is consistent with the most recent transmittal. I think by committing to all, having 1s, 2s, and 3s in this project is a very meaningful commitment. I'm hopeful that you'll follow your staff's recommendation. I'm hopeful that you'll follow your planning commission's recommendation. I could pull all my experts back up here to do the rebuttal. I don't really think I need to. I think Mr. Bosey, who's your planning director, has done a great job summarizing why this is compatible with the neighborhood. And I'm asking you to listen to your staff and voting to approve this.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Hall, and then I'm on deck.
I appreciate all of the affordable housing talk, but we're talking about 22, we're talking about 1 unit out of 10 is affordable. This is not an affordable housing project. This is a project that's going to include a carrot of affordable housing. It's still, if without buying anything from the Carlisle, that's a 10-acre plot with 336 units. You can say we're going to do 15 acres. You can say we're going to include the 27 acres. You can say whatever acres you want to include, but without the growth management plan amendment, it's a 10-acre plot of land with 336 units. And that's why I'm opposing it.
I'm going to make some statements that are combined from Commissioner Colwell and Commissioner Hall, which I thought were very eloquent. I might come to a little bit of a different conclusion, but Commissioner Hall stated, he's looking at what's allowable and what's desirable, and that, this is only, the affordable piece is only 1 in 10, and that's a carrot. I'm here to say that, and maybe we should wait for something better. I mean, I don't know about anybody else that's been in this room over the last 2 years that I've been here, but and if we want to hear from citizens as a whole in the community and not just the 4,000, but we want to look strategically. I don't say this as a critique or anything. We're having a good open conversation here. what are we waiting for? How many people in here said we've been waiting too damn long, and that's why people are sleeping in their cars and there's no affordable? And if we think the affordable piece is only 1 in 10, I got news for you. If we're waiting for somebody to build something on this piece of property that's 100% affordable, we better open up the 5th floor and every other conference room in here, because every single man, woman, and child is going to say, I don't want government housing with 300 affordable units in my community. Nobody wants 100% affordable. So I think we have to take it. You say carrot, I say in pieces, to make it a much more cohesive project. I don't know anybody in this community that's going to come in here and give us all hugs because we built a 100% affordable housing project in their community. I think the only reason why that something is desirable or even possibly allowable is because it is a percentage. I think we do the best job possible, and Commissioner Saunders, I think, is a pro at this when he sits there and says 20% is great, but how about 25? I mean, we had actual times in here where we were able to raise the amount of affordable, but I'll now defer to what Commissioner Colwell said, where he very eloquently was saying, look, we can sit here with rose-colored glasses on and just sort of look at through a microscope at this project and make a decision, but be careful what you wish for, because we do know what's coming. And so, to use his words and to say that this could actually be a positive compared to what's coming down the road, where we don't get to have a big conversation in here. Now, all of a sudden, we've got the state telling us, wow, that's a prime piece of real estate there, and 1 in 10 units being affordable, that doesn't even meet the criteria anymore. Should have built that when you had the chance. Now we're going to tell you what goes on that piece of property. And I know I'm overly summarizing, but Mr. Bosley, correct me if I'm wrong and jump up on the podium if you need to. But the direction we're getting from the state and from our constituents is, what are you waiting for? Why are you splitting hairs on this, that, and the other? Affordable housing has already been missing in this community. And what I liked about this project is I think it is allowable. I think it's desirable. I do like the mix of it. Before we vote, and we're maybe not ready to right now, but I like the idea of taking a pregnant pause and taking a break and having Mr. Yovanovitch talk to his client. We're close up to a break anyway, to see if there's what the best algorithm is. But when I look at citizens that say 208 instead of 336 is acceptable, okay, that's a little over 100 difference. 62 affordable housing is better than 76. Citizens here are actually saying that they're agreeable to that. And I sit here and say, God, just a little over a dozen units is making such a big difference when we've sat in here and had rocks thrown at us. That what are we waiting for? Why aren't we injecting affordable housing percentages in every project? And now we have one right in front of us, and I'm hearing some of my own colleagues say, let's wait and see if anybody else comes forward, and maybe we'll allow them to build a more affordable piece on that piece of property. Citizens out here want a development that's 80% affordable housing units. I have emails here from people that they didn't care what the number was. They just said, don't build affordable housing units in my neighborhood because we have really nice homes, and find another place for these blue collar apartments. I mean, somebody, more than a few people sent those emails with almost those exact words. So, I want to make sure before we pass on an opportunity here because, of one story or 14 too many units, that sort of thing, we might be missing an opportunity here, or we might be sitting here and getting something force-fed on this community. And I don't know that I like to roll the dice for that. And I appreciate what Commissioner Hall is saying. I know, the people have spoken, but the way government works here is we don't just take a poll and, wow, 4,000 people don't want it in their community, so let's find a community where 4,000 people aren't going to storm the castle, and then we'll shoehorn it into their community. We also have to look at code, land development, traffic. We have things that we're up here also representing, which is county ordinances, county guidance. We're looking at the county in a strategic way and say, okay, if not this neighborhood, then where? And me personally, I don't think I don't think this is perfect, so let's just wait and see what maybe comes along. We got people that these affordable units are going to go in one day, and those people are going to say, man, I wish those units would have been available 5, 10 years ago. Where the heck were you, county commissioners? You were sitting on your hands and doing nothing, and I don't want to be guilty of that. I'm not saying I love every piece of this project, and my suggestion is going to be, since we're creeping up on a 250, what we would take as a 250, a 250, a 10-minute break to allow the applicant to talk to whoever he needs to, and he might come back and say there's no changes, and then we at least vote on it. But Commissioner Saunders was sort of alluding to that, and I think, this is such a major decision that we want to make sure that you've got the chance to sort of reattack on something that maybe we haven't had a chance to talk about here. But I never want to be guilty of sitting here saying waiting. I don't want to rush to judgment either. I'd rather do nothing than the wrong thing, and I've said that before. But just as some other decisions we've made here, sometimes waiting isn't the best option either. And as Commissioner Caldwell said, we know what's coming around the corner. Maybe these citizens aren't as informed, nothing negative, but we hear on a regular basis here as elected officials what's coming from the state. And there's going to be a whole bunch of things we're not going to be able to prevent because 4,000 people don't want it. So we're in a very advantageous position right now, possibly, and I want to make sure we exhaust this conversation before we kick the can and hope for something better and then force feed something on these good people and say, too bad, so sad, and then we're wishing, we had a time machine to go back to this afternoon. Not saying these are the numbers that are, the best case scenario, but I think, being plus or minus a dozen units here or there to me is negligible. It's not that huge of a difference. But that's just me. Anybody else?
I will say that
Yes, sir.
if the petitioner goes back and comes back with something different, we'll definitely entertain that.
Okay.
All ears about that. They're just opposed as it's written right now. But any changes, they're willing to listen.
Well, regardless of what Mr. Ivanovich would say, he might not need the time, but I'm going to propose that we come back here at 2:55. That seems a little excessive, but I don't think this is a 30-second phone call, and this is the biggest thing we have on the agenda today. So I don't want to have a rush to judgment. So let's say we come back at 2:55, and we'll resume.
You have a live mic.
Okay. Mr. Jovanovich, floor is yours.
I cannot, first of all, I want to correct something because I just want to, I misheard what Commissioner Hall said with regard to the number of units that were being set aside. I thought he said 1 in 10. What he said was 1 in 5. I think really what we're setting aside is because, let's just use the 10 acres, even though I don't agree it's 10 acres. We could do 70 units, 4 base, 3 infill, so that's 70. We're asking for 336 total units, so that's a bump of 266. We're willing to set aside 78 of those 266, which is a 30% set aside of the additional units. So I just wanted to get that on the record because I think that's, a significant percentage of the units, the actual bonus units that are being set aside.
So did you just say 78 plus 70?
No, what I'm saying is there's 200, we're only asking for 266 additional units.
Additional units, of
Additional.
which they'll give 78
Of
of
those,
bonus units. That's where he's getting the 30%.
that's how that math,
Of the total units, it's
still 22.6, right. So we look at it as a total, but we can also look at it as the quote bonus number of units. I talked to my client, reducing it a floor is a reduction of 80 units. That kills the project, and then you're going to have the faith that someone's going to come along and somehow figure out how to make this project work with 80 less units, and I just candidly don't see that happening anytime soon. And this is a real-time problem right now. It's not a problem that we're going to see in the future. So I don't have any room to give on the floors because it's just too big a give.
And just for the sake of argument, because there might be people watching in this room or on TV or what have you that say, well, you could reduce the floors to 3 and then just make a lot of the units on the 3 floors that exist smaller, so you could still have your overall number. I'm not saying that's the approved solution, because like I think somebody said in here, people are looking for more bigger than 1-bedroom apartments. But I still think you play around with the algorithm. It's plus or minus a very small number. We're not making a substantial movement, but I assume you looked at that.
We have. I mean, they've done their unit mix, figured it out. Because remember, the level of amenities that they're putting into this project, they have to generate enough revenue to provide those amenities and maintain those amenities. It's still revenue is an
What I would
important
tell the
factor.
community is if we negotiated all that out of there, then you're truly getting an affordable housing,
Right.
sort of low income, type of unit. And I think, a lot of the emails I got, there were people that didn't even want this because it had any affordable housing in it. Maybe it wasn't the majority, and you can't. I mean, to me, I can't keep score and make a judgment call and say I got 80 emails for and 40 emails against, so I'm going to support the people that are for, or that sort of thing. I mean, I think we've got to look at more strategically. But to your point, you've looked at that.
Yes.
That if you took off an entire floor, there's no way you sit there and another developer would have to do the same thing. I mean,
The math's the math for a Class A project, and that's what Collier County is. Collier County is a Class A community, and that's what we're delivering. And none of my clients want to build that other option. So my client will just simply walk away if they lose the 80 units. And
well, and neither do neighbors and the residents, according to the people that
Right.
I hear from. Commissioner Saunders and then Commissioner Hall, you're on deck.
I'd like to ask Ms. Scott if she would come up to the microphone. I will say that I'm not too terribly concerned about the density or the height, quite frankly. I know that that's not what people want to hear, but I am very concerned about the transportation aspects of it. And this is going to result in 2 entrances on Airport Road, right in, right out only. And it's going to result in a certain number of U-turn movements somewhere along Airport Road. And I need to understand how those movements are going to work and whether that's going to create a problem, because traffic is pretty heavy on Airport Road. I don't want to turn Airport Road into a Mockley Road. I know we're not getting there, but I just want to make sure if this goes through, that we're not creating a problem on Airport Road.
For the record, Trinity Scott, Transportation Services Department Head. Airport Road is currently operating on a level of service D in this particular area, which is within our acceptable levels of service, which is why we recommended approval of the project. With regard to U-turns, with the second entrance, it does allow, that's further south on the project, it does allow people to come out. In that particular section of Airport Road, there are several U-turn opportunities, and if you come out on that south end, you would be going down to make a U-turn at the car dealership, opposite the car dealership, which has different peak times than what a residential development has. So we believe that folks could go down and use that. If that U-turn is backed up, there's yet another U-turn further south as well. It all depends on what someone's final destination is. They may decide to go down and go Pine Ridge Road, go through the industrial park, through Trade Center Way. There's lots of opportunities to get around in that area. But if Publix is their destination, there's a Publix to the north, there's a Publix to the south, there's commercial all around that area.
Okay, so you don't anticipate this creating a particular problem?
No, we will evaluate it when they come in for their site development plan. They will look at the turn lane lengths along the corridor. If there are turn lanes that need to be widened, it will be their responsibility as part of their project to do that. But we do that evaluation at site development plan when we know what they will actually be building.
Are there any improvements to Airport Road to alleviate that, to improve your level of service D right now? That's only going to get worse. Are there any improvements we can make? I know we're looking at a whole lot of different roads, and this is way into the future, but just curious as to whether there are improvements to Airport Road in that area.
So in this particular area, one area that we have been looking at is improvements to the intersection of Airport and Orange Blossom. We have been working with the developments as they come in at that immediate corner to obtain additional right-of-way to be able to do some intersection improvements there. You're very familiar, the board's very familiar with our Pine Ridge Road study that we completed from Livingston over to Napa, which resulted in some innovative intersections. We are looking at doing something similar at Pine Ridge Road, which would look at the intersection of Pine Ridge and Airport Road.
No roundabout it.
No roundabout, sir.
I would like to ask Mr. Yovanovitch a question. We're at 22%. Is that the amount of affordable housing at your, is it 22.5%?
22.6%.
22.6. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see us get closer to 25% going forward. And I did talk to Mr. Yovanovitch about bumping this to 25%. That's not possible with this project. But I would like to ask that Mr. Yovanovitch talk to his client about the possibility of making a contribution to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, some dollar amount per unit, perhaps $1,000 a unit, or which would be actually very significant if you're looking at 336 units. It's a big number, but as we're going through this discussion, I'd like for Mr. Yovanovitch to talk to his client about whether there could be a contribution to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And I understand that would, if there is going to be any kind of a contribution, I understand that would have to be tied to sales or COs or something similar to what we did with Mr. Ferraro's project. Just a thought. So that would help me get over the hump here. And that's all, Mr. Chairman, for right now.
Oh, I like that idea. And I know sometimes, folks look at that and say, oh, they're buying their way out of it. When we start spending that money on really good things, those quote unquote, donations to that trust fund are going to prove extremely valuable. So I like that. I like that. Commissioner Hall and then Commissioner Colwell, you're on deck.
Just a couple of comments about the transportation, the level of service on airport being level D. that gets me back to where what's allowable and what's desirable. And then with regard to the other properties that are out there on those corners and what could be, the what-ifs are still the what-ifs. Whether we approve or disapprove this project, those what-ifs are still, we don't, this decision doesn't have anything to do with those. And then lastly, with come on down, Dave, if you would. With the regard of the people not wanting affordable housing or me trying to kick this down the road, that's simply not true. So if you would just briefly in a minute or two, just share with my colleagues what you shared with me at the break.
Yeah. Well, first of all, and thank you, Commissioner Hall. The Orange Blossom Airport Road Alliance of the 14 communities, the vast majority of the residents, I'm sure there are other residents out there from all over that make comments, but our group from the beginning has been very clear with me and our whole leadership team, and we have members from all the communities, that we are fine with all of this being affordable at lower height and lower density, whatever that is. We are fine with taking our chances in the future if this is denied. I did a quick map quest also, and the school building is more than a mile away. It's about 1.7 miles away. So I know that comment was made earlier. But you know, we like the idea of more affordable housing on this piece of land or other pieces of land there. We think that's good for our community, that's good for our neighborhood, regardless of what the percent, even if it's 100%, we'd be okay with that. But we're concerned is about height and density.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify, the Ritz in Tiburon is within a mile, and that is about the height is equivalent to 80 to 100 feet. So that's the real measure, not necessarily the school board building. But I just want, now, back to the comment or the question you asked me about the contribution. I think the contribution would be fine if it was only on the market rate units. So we didn't get double smacked on the market rate units and also provide the income restricted units. So that's still a $250,000 commitment. I mean, when you think about it, $1,000 per whatever 336 minus, so yeah, minus 76 is that's 250, 260.
All right.
So that's.
I was assuming we were going to be somewhere around 250 or 260. My math was obviously not very good. So, yeah, that's fine. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's fine.
So I think that, you know, I really don't believe the community would be happy with a 100% affordable housing commitment, but I can't speak for Mr. Renner. But I can tell you that the community is also fighting the Lutger project too. So there is this angst from the community on height overall, and it won't be limited to just this project. So I think what we're proposing is a great project. If you compare it to Allura and you go by Allura, that's an affordable housing aspect to it, and it's, you know, a fabulous project that the community would be very proud of. I think we're, you know, with 30% of the bonus units being set aside and another $1,000 per unit for the affordable housing, we are. I think you're making a nice dent in a problem that Collier County is addressing or suffering right now, and you don't have to wait a couple of years to find that person who may be able to afford the 100% affordable project. So we're requesting your approval with the modifications that we've just made.
Commissioner Cole.
I actually had a question for Trinity reference traffic. And I kind of feel the same way Commissioner Saunders. I mean, I think the density, it may be just slightly a little, but I think it's doable. And the height is not really a problem when you really look at the surrounding. If you go up Orange Blossom another 600 feet, I mean, you got buildings just as tall or maybe taller that are being built there right now before you get to the school. So, but my question is more on the lines of, you know, this is going to have some affordable housing units. It's going to have some single bedroom apartments and things like that. And we talk about traffic. Is there in your professional opinion, you think a percentage of these people are going to use public transit, especially if they work in some of these community centers, to the north and the south, and that will remove some vehicle traffic from the roadways?
They very well may. In addition, they are along a route that does go up and connect with a connector that goes to Lee County as well. It connects with our link, which is up at Creekside. So this is actually one of our more robust routes as far as from Collier County coverage standpoint. It does go the entire length of Airport Road and does make that connection up on the north end.
Okay, so people that work in the hospitals, people that work in different areas like that would have access to public transit from this community and be able to make those connections
Yes, this
and leave their cars at home, even if they have a car.
Yes, the specific route that this covers would, if they boarded the bus on the opposite side of the road, which they could board up near Orange Blossom, they would be able to go up and get directly in front of the North Collier Regional Hospital.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have anybody else lit up. Anybody have any follow-up questions or make a motion or bring up Mr. Bosey? It's always fun. Commissioner Saunders.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that will be unpopular with some folks here, but I think it's the right thing. I'm going to make a motion to approve this with the different changes that we've talked about, plus the it's a $250,000 ultimately contribution to the trust fund tied to COs. I think would be the fair way to do it. I think this is going to help solve a lot of problems, and I don't really believe it's going to create a significant impact on the community. So I'm going to make a motion to approve that with these alterations.
I'm going to second that motion, and here's my comments. I agree with Commissioner Saunders. I don't want to say I'm not concerned with density or height. We're always concerned with that, and he means the same thing. But I don't see density or height being a problem here. The questions I had about traffic were already answered by Trinity. Anytime we have a development that comes in, traffic's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. What we want to know is it going to explode beyond what the capability is of the roads? And if it is, but it's fixable with wider turn lanes and things like that, then we take a look at that. I like the changes with the additions that Commissioner Saunders made. And then lastly, I'll say this doesn't solve the affordable housing problem, but we've had so many of our citizens, and they matter as well, saying, stop waiting, stop waiting, stop waiting. And so I think you got to start somewhere. And we've already approved several things where we were so proud of ourselves because it had 20% affordable housing or 25. So, I think we got to strategically look across the whole county. And even though you might have a community that has a consensus and feels a certain way, although I appreciate that and I respect it, I've had to vote for very specific things, even in my own district, that, the citizens came in here with matching shirts and felt a certain way. But, we take a look at the overall strategic view. So lastly, I'll just say, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And so I think finding a cohesive, balanced approach and taking bites out of this affordable housing option, and this isn't just an affordable housing project, it does other things. There's going to be people that want to live in this community, and they're going to buy they're going to rent the more expensive apartments because they want to be at ground zero where there's a lot of commercial activity and a lot of jobs. And so what I like about this project is I actually don't think anybody is going to be banging on tables in a positive way if we ever had a 100% affordable housing project come to us and they're going to say, yes, that's exactly what we want, everything in there to be affordable. Be careful what you wish for, because I don't think that you would like the look of that, because it would be very no frills. And I also don't think when we're trying to build a cohesive community here in Collier County, the same way I don't want a whole strip of storage units all next to each other and that train left the station, I think we don't want big giant units in certain strategic spots all over Collier County that are 100% affordable. I think we want to share the wealth, spread the load, and I think this does that. So I second Commissioner Saunders' motion. I don't have any commissioners lit up, so I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
It passes 4-1. Okay, County Manager, what's next?
Commissioners, that brings us to item 15, staff and commission general communications. Item 15A is public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda by individuals not already heard during previous public comments in the meeting.
Wait, take time. If people can just exit quietly and professionally, we're not done for the day.
No speakers, Troy?
No speakers on this item.
Okay, Ms. Patterson.
We do not have any staff project updates today, so that brings us to staff and commission general communications. First of all, just a reminder that we have a workshop this Thursday on the State Veterans Nursing Home. It's in this room at 3 p.m. Also for your calendars, and we'll be sending this out to your assistants, June 15th, 2023 at 9 a.m. is our budget workshop. Also, just one more matter is as we move towards the summer, working some items through Planning Commission. We did have an item go to the Planning Commission last week that was more controversial than expected. We had expected some public opposition. It's a storage facility out on 951. Expected some neighborhood opposition. Turned out to be a lot more opposition than expected. We had been working with the applicant on that about scheduling. Traditionally,
Is this District 3, the parcel between the two FP&L substations?
it is. So we have been working with these applicants. I think some people had gotten the impression that with us working through the summer, it became open season for land use, but you all had been specific with us that we were going to continue on our long practice of not hearing controversial land use items in the summer. So two reasons why we've been careful to schedule things even on the shoulders of the deep summer. One is obviously the seasonal factor, which we experience a lot here in the urban area. But the second is that in Golden Gate Estates and some of our other areas where people are more year round, we do have that time of year when people are taking their vacations, particularly with their kids. And we have had some criticism in the past when we've taken things like project meetings for roads or stormwater out into the estates and other areas where people felt that they couldn't be there because this was their only time to really vacation with their kids. So we had cautioned the applicant that if they had difficulties at the Planning Commission, that the likelihood was that item was going to move to September at the earliest, to be sure that we were giving the public a full chance to be able to air their concerns, and to work hard to try to solve those public problems as well as the internal problems we were having. This is a very transportation-driven issue. However, the neighborhood has come out with more objections that have nothing to do with transportation. So wanted to bring that to the board's attention. The applicants have been pretty vocal about wanting to get to the board in June. Your staff remains reluctant to schedule that for a late June hearing simply due to those things that I outlined.
Can I ask a question in that regard?
Absolutely.
Well, again, I appreciate the thought processes with regard to withholding contentious land use items. The month of June has always been part of the board schedule. The extra 2 meetings in August and the 1 meeting in July are the ones that I was specific about withholding contentious land use items on. My question is, and again, what's going to get better between the second meeting in June and September?
We had hoped things were going to get better between May, when I had the conversation with the applicant, and now that they would have worked through some of these issues, both with the neighborhood as well as with transportation. I think 2 things is, one is that it's the perception that we're pushing this forward against some pretty much larger public opposition than we expected in a time when we know that a lot of folks are taking vacations with their family, similar to when we push items onto the agenda when we know folks aren't back from up north. That's just the staff's perspective, and I've worked here now 23 years looking at land use. We're very careful what we put onto the agenda on the shoulders of either season or summer. simply because of being sensitive to the public's needs on both of those things. So we traditionally have reserved even the July meetings for no land use, because that's when we set the maximum millage rate and deal with a lot of our administrative issues before going on what was summer recess. Same thing coming back. So on the shoulder of that, late June and then September had been reserved because, we don't have folks either here returned or people have been out on summer vacations. And also you deal with in September, 4 meetings. You'll have a budget hearing, then you have a board meeting, then you have a budget hearing, then you have a board meeting. So we've been very careful in the scheduling of land use because of those things. But that's why I'm bringing it to all of you in the event that there's any different opinions, or if you feel comfortable with bringing the petition, then we want to be sure we're being consistent with your direction. I believe I heard your direction, and I think that keeping them off of the agenda is consistent with how we've dealt with these items in the past. But obviously you are the ones that tell me what to do.
Commissioner Saunders, how do you feel?
Yeah, he's lit up, I was just gonna say.
Well,
He actually hit his
course.
button, I didn't.
Hey,
So,
you don't have the gavel
if-
anymore, I got this.
Sorry.
I got this.
if this was scheduled, it would be the second meeting in June, is that what we're talking about?
It would be.
Right.
Okay. I think when even during the discussion, when we were setting the summer schedule to include those other 3 meetings, I think we were pretty clear in saying, we're not really changing the philosophy of we don't have controversial land use matters before the board during those, that part of the summer, because it's just not fair to residents. I know we're becoming more of a year-round community, but at the same time, I don't see the urgency. I'd rather put this off until September. That would be our normal thing if we weren't meeting those two meetings in August and that 1 meeting in July. If we didn't have those meetings, there'd be no question. We would be maintaining that normal process where this would be put off until September. I think we should continue with that. I'd hate to see us get any controversial zoning issues in the summertime.
Understood.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when the staff or you as the county manager see that pop up on your radar, like, hey, this might be in that sort of summer zone, and we've, then I would just say, just like you did with Isles of Capri, that at least you default to the commissioner of that district. I mean, if that specific commissioner definitely agreed, like Isles of Capri was a perfect example. You actually did make the call. I think it was already made, but I was like, great call, boom, and then I don't think anybody here would have disagreed. So I think it's sort of like, reach out to the commissioner of that district, and we've just heard from the commissioner that says, hey, because he is hearing from we're all hearing from a lot of people on these issues, but the person whose district it resides in, just like, Commissioner Hall heard, I'm sure, from more people than we did, but maybe not a lot more, because we got a lot. So, I mean, I think that's a good call. And something could change, maybe, and then that's where you'll talk. But I think if we make a command decision, that we'll float it to September.
Understood.
As long as we don't feel like we're kicking the can to, I'm not big on delaying stuff, but if it's truly to give time and all those other things. The only thing I would say is the second meeting in June isn't a meeting we normally wouldn't be here, and I think that was your point, right? So my initial thought, although there again, I think the default position is to the commissioner whose district that's in, but my default position was, say we were taking the normal summer break. That second meeting in June is a normal meeting, and what we had said is when we took off in the summer, or the meetings in the summer, we wouldn't hear anything. But to Commissioner Saunders' point, we also had this sort of unwritten rule that as we were sort of on either side of that summer break, we'd be very judicious. So, I guess my closing comment, it sounds like I'm a little all over the map. I'm not. My closing comment is, this is one of those times where there are meetings on either side that are normal meetings, but that might not be the time to sort of squeeze in something, especially if the sitting commissioner in that district feels strongly, with you on
Agreed.
that.
And we have been working with the applicants, again, to make sure they understood, yes, these are normal meetings that we have, but we're not changing the way that we operate with or without these added summer meetings, is simply that we manage these as they're appropriate to come onto the agenda. And that's not any different than if this was a land use item, say Isles of Capri again, we would advise the same. And we have advised these applicants. The Haven will tell you exactly that. I advised Mr. Jovanovich, if he didn't make it to the May agenda, the Haven wasn't going till fall. So that was it. Work hard to keep your schedules, and even better than that is work hard to get on summary.
And the county attorney may be getting ready to throw some cold water at us.
No, I'm just saying this is a board policy. It's
Oh,
been a
okay,
board
I thought-
policy since I've been here.
I thought you were going to say, hey, we have to,
No.
right.
It's board policy. It's always been board policy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
That's all I have, County Attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, I'll go down the line here. Commissioner Cowell. Closing comments, anything?
Yeah, I'm good right now.
Okay.
I'm good.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Saunders.
I do have two things. I'd like to have the county attorney really give us kind of an in-depth analysis of what the live local legislation really does do. I'd like to see that at our next meeting. If I'm sure you've got some material on that, but we had a lot of discussion about that today, and I think there's some confusion as to what we can and cannot do, and that we really need to, I think, have some analysis of that. And then, secondly, I'd like at our second meeting in June to give staff a little bit of time, a really thorough report on where we are with workforce and affordable housing in the sense of what we've approved, what's been built, what staff's doing to make sure that units are really being utilized as required in the zoning documents. We're all getting criticized pretty regularly now about the fact that we're not doing anything about affordable housing, and that's just not accurate. And so I'd like some official presentation, some numbers of units and also units that are approved going forward.
Understood.
That's easy.
Commissioner Hall.
A couple things. First of all, I'm in agreement with the decision. I have no heartburn about it at all. I like the project. I just had to be with my people. Secondly, I met with a whole bunch of people in District 2, 25 people representing about 6,000 homes. And here's what they want. So we've landscaped about 100 miles of road in Collier County. And there's 4 miles that got left out. And that's the north-south corridor between Vanderbilt Beach and Immokalee of Airport and Goodlet. The reason why those roads got left out of the landscaping is because we didn't want to landscape them and then rip it out when we expanded the roads. So now that we're going to expand the roads, they're like, hey, we've paid taxes for 20 years and we've landscaped everybody else's roads, but we've gotten left out. We had the money earmarked, now it's gone. Because the board made a decision, which was a good decision in 2019, to end that landscaping, because we have 55 more miles plus going out east that we're not going to landscape. So I met with Neil Dorrell. He was representing Pelican Marsh. I met with him one day, and he expressed the need, all of that community. And then when I met with this big group was Arthrex, Pelican Marsh, the Orchards, the Galleria, Ritz-Carlton, Tiburon. I mean, people in the Galleria shops. There was a large contingent of people there wanting and asking if the board would consider making an exception for those last 4 miles and allowing those roads to be landscaped when they're expanded. The cost of that is about $420,000 a mile, so $1.4 million. I mentioned the MSTU. They said we did not want to do that. We've already paid taxes and we would just lack, and so I said, I'll ask the board if they've got the resolve to do anything like that. I can bring it back in an executive summary, or I don't know if we can decide to do it now, or what's your thoughts?
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, I'd like to see the plan. I'm thinking bring it in an executive summary so I can look at everything. One of the reasons I was one of the ones that kind of led the charge on stopping the construction of new landscape medians. And, it's for today's discussion, it's $500,000 in expense to landscape that facility, but then last count, it was running us $75,000 a lineal mile
To maintain it.
forever.
Yeah.
So that 4 miles then translates into another $280,000 a year forever to be
I think,
maintained.
And we brought that up, and I think that there, is it Pam something? What's Pam's last name, Trinity? Anyway, Pam, she said, you know, there's some kind of maintenance agreement with the county that those people could maintain it if we installed it. And I think that would,
Well, then that comes back around to the overall, for me, I don't know about the rest of them, but for me, the overall question is, you know, what's the exposure, not just the front end cost, you know, we got a grant from the DOT to do some landscape median,
on Santa Barbara.
on Davis, I think it was.
Davis.
It was on Davis, but there again, that adds to, I mean, we're spending in excess of $10 million a year on maintenance of our roads, and then we have these discussions about what we're doing for housing affordability and so on and so forth. That's where I get caught
No, I get it. I wouldn't even be interested in the maintenance of it. I just I said, I'll go to the board and ask them if they have the resolve to make an exception, to put you some landscaping in those medians. We'll leave it up to them in some kind of agreement to maintain it. And that's the reason why it was a good decision to end it, because of the labor, because of the maintenance cost and the cost of materials and the shortage of labor. I mean, everybody in the world shares the same yard mower.
I know we were in the process of adjusting our proposals for landscape maintenance contracts. Has the per mile cost gone down any?
For the record, Trinity Scott, Transportation Management Services, like everything else, no, it hasn't gone down. We're actually in the process right now of putting several of those contracts back out because they are up. So we'll see what the cost increases are. We'll be prepared to talk about that during budget. I will note on Goodlet as well as Airport. So Goodlet from Vanderbilt to Immokalee Road and Airport from Airport to Immokalee Road. Any decision with regard to installation of landscaping would not be a this budget year decision because both of those roadways are planned to be widened within our 5-year program. So any installation costs would be probably 3-4 years down the road before the board would have to finally make that decision. We will design, as we do with all of our medians, with the proper soil and sleeving for future irrigation should there be a desire to install landscaping in the future. We can bring back options if that's the direction of the board. At this point, though, we are not far enough along in design to know how much of a median will be remaining. The Airport Road project, we are widening to the median. And the Goodlet project, the right-of-way is significantly constrained in that area based on Pelican Marsh being there. So I can't tell you today what type of landscaping we would even be able to install.
Commissioner Saunders.
We actually made exception to our rule there in terms of stopping the program. We stopped the program because it became too expensive at that time. And I think we brought in some crews in-house to do some of the landscaping. I don't know how that's panned out and whether or not that should be expanded. Maybe that's something that we need to look at. But I would support doing the medians. I think that I'm not sure what the return on investment would be, but I certainly think that it makes our community a whole lot nicer, and those are areas that should be improved.
Just like everything else, it encourages tourism.
Exactly. So the return on investment may be 150 years, but there is a return.
Commissioners, we can work with Commissioner Hall and bring back some options, and because of the timing, that also gives us an opportunity to talk to those communities and see if there's any appetite for a partnership on the maintenance, and then we can flesh. We'll work with you, Commissioner Hall, and we can flesh that out and bring it back.
Yeah, I just want to be able to go back to them and say, this is a possibility,
Yep.
or nope, you're dead in the water.
No, we'll work with them for sure, and with you.
That'll be good news. Thank you.
Yeah, and once we decide what the TPC is, that was my only other comment. I didn't wait for you to call on me, but that was I wanted to see what the total project cost was going to be.
Long-term maintenance thing.
Yep.
Commissioner Cole has been waiting patiently, having pushed this button, but was
Trinity walked away
preceded
already.
by Commissioner McDaniel.
I'm getting her exercise today.
Just one.
I was just curious, because I've been dealing with Whippoorwill and other places and talking about landscaping and non-landscaping, what the county's willing to do or not willing to do. But I've been running into a lot of different people that are brainstorming, and they're saying that there's certain like vegetation, certain plants that are native, that are very decorative and things like that, don't require any watering, don't require any irrigation, that it could thrive in some of these medians without any maintenance. And I don't know if we've looked in or had any people looking into these, that, you know, it might be a one-time deal and we walk away from it. So I don't know.
Mr. McDaniel down there is,
The one thing I did learn from a council meeting that I was attending, dealing with median beautification many, many years ago, was that some of these plants that thrive in Florida's climate will not thrive in a median, because the climate in the median is a whole lot different with the exhaust and the temperatures. So it may not be that easy a fix that way.
I was just curious because I know it's been thrown
I mean, it'd be
around.
something to look at, but
it is, and certainly we can have, I can have Pam Lubitsch pull together some information for you. The thing that we typically will run into, though, is that folks see the remainder of the landscaping and of what we have currently landscaped, and they have an expectation that that's what they desire as well. And so sometimes it depends on if it's a community effort that they're coming forward and saying that's what we want here. If we install that, then they sometimes have a different expectation when they've seen royal palms in other areas. So.
And on, it's my turn now. And on that, like we have, well, I just want to wait for you, Mr. Chair. I think we have at least 2 miles of a pilot program that we've redesigned the median in construction and inverted it as opposed to humping it. And then we've also engaged with Garden to seek happy plants that will live there that require less fertilization, maintenance, irrigation, so on and so forth. And by the time these road projects come along, from a timing standpoint, what I heard was correct, we're looking 2 years out-ish before those expansions of those roadways in fact comes in place. We'll be able to have some data to ultimately look at as well.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
There's a chance. There's a chance.
Yeah, I just
Thank
have a
you.
couple closing comments.
I'm not, I do have a comment, or
Fine.
you gonna let me go first?
Sure.
Sir, please. My question is for, I didn't get to ask this yesterday, but there are 4 marinas, public marinas, that the county operates. I know a couple of them were damaged severely during the storm, but I have also heard that we're out for a rebid for a new vendor to take it over. It has also been shared with me, and I'd like somebody to have a look at the RFP that went out, because I was told that the county is soliciting a vendor for all 4, which is the circumstance that we had before, where one person paid or took on if you will, the responsibility, and then sublet operations to individual operators. So I'd like 2 things. I'd like for us to move as quickly as possible to get minimum services availed at our marina sites, minimum fuel, water, just little things that most boaters are self-sufficient when they're putting their boat in by themselves. And then I would also like us to explore individual operators at those marinas, not necessarily one that is then in a sublet position with sub-operators.
Okay, understood.
Can one of you comment? I mean, 3 of those marinas are in my area, and I've been working really closely with Olima and Mr. Rodriguez, on Goodland, Kexambas, and Port of the Islands. And I mean, I'll let you chime in, Mr. Rodriguez, if you can, but the minimum requirements of gas, water, ice, things like that, bait. I know we had a gap between our previous vendor and now, but I think we filled that in short order. We fixed the gas pump at Port of the Islands, and it's pumping gas. So am I correct in saying that we had a minimal gap, at least the 3 that are in my district, and that we have Parks and Rec employees that are selling those minimum type things? Granted, we don't have a full up and a marine store selling candy and all that, but are we providing those minimal things? I mean, I know what the answer is, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we are selling the gas. That's finally worked its way out. We are working to get the water, the ice, and just some basic drinks available to them. There's some challenges there that staff is still working through. They do have some vending machines at some locations. So unless Tanya Williams has any additional detail, I think that's where we're at now.
Yeah, I was going to say how we quickly responded in Tiger Tail when we lost a vendor there and with vending machines that sold at least drinks and some food as a minimum. So I know we were trying to do something a bit more aggressive, but while that was sort of working its way through, getting some vending machines, renting some and plugging them in shouldn't be a showstopper. So I agree with Commissioner McDaniel. If we're not doing that at all the locations, we're past that window of when we should have been doing that. So I've heard from citizens as well. So we must have fixed it at one or two of them because I got actually thank you notes from some people. And so I know that we've attacked it,
Absolutely.
at least partially.
And in response to the contract, staff is working diligently. It did go out in an RFP, and there is one vendor that's responded. The goal is to get, as you were directed us probably about a year and a half ago, is to rewrite that contract so that the revenues from the boat launch fees as well as the parking comes back to the county so that we can retire the costs associated with maintaining these facilities. And that's in the works. We do have a viable contractor who provided a first brush proposal that looks very good, and they're going to take on the cost. Just for your situational awareness, 4 facilities takes quite a few employees. They're open 7 days a week. Some are open about 12 hours a day from sunup to sundown. And so there's a lot of costs associated with that. There are options in that contract to utilize this vendor potentially for other sales that'll help the parks and help gain additional revenues for the parks. So that's in negotiations now. As soon as we get that first draft and we have a recommendation for staff, we'll bring it back to the board for your consideration.
Okay, so, but there is gas being sold and.
Absolutely. We have, we procure the gas and the county staff, thanks to Parks and Recreation and their team and some other contracted labor, we're selling and we're opening the parks and closing them as before.
Very good. That's all, sir.
Commissioner Hall.
On that note, did y'all get the email from Mr. Delaney, the kid that that took the loan out for 4 jet skis and he was operating his business and he was basically emailing us for some grace and Miss Edwards. And there's 202 permits out and there's only supposed to be 180. He kind of got, I don't like to do these things because I don't like to set precedents, but at the same time, the human factor's there. His father-in-law or his ex-stepfather is selling the business, so that permit's going to go with whoever buys it. But he was owning and operating it for his ex-father-in-law, so he just needs a permit because he's a small footprint. He's got 4 jet skis, and it's the way that he provides for his family. And so, just for the record, I'm all about letting him have a permit if this is the right time to talk about that.
I'll let Mr. Rodriguez, comment, but I mean, I get that, and I saw the email, and I saw his family photo and whatnot, and I really wanted Parks and Rec to respond because they know more of the history of who we've said no to, who we've said yes. There's a bunch of people. There are other people that ask for special exceptions, and I think in some cases we held the line because also too one of the things that I believe we told some of those people a year ago is, hey, asking for the permit's the first thing you should have done, not buy the jet skis, spend $100,000, do this, do that, and then find out, oh my God, they're not giving permits out anymore. And we gave some people some pretty strong words, because of that. And so
His ex-father-in-law.
He had a permit, but
I got that. I read the email, and that's what I'm saying. I'm just talking generically that there's some people that didn't have the exact case. Every case was different, but that's why I didn't hit a quick reply, and I bet none of us did, because also you had all the Parks and Rec leadership on that same email to include, I think, Mr. Rodriguez. So it was like, okay, I don't want to prematurely say, oh, you have a special case. Yes, I approve it, because I really think I want the read from Parks and Rec, whom I have told the last 10 people that had a special case no, and then we're all going to get 1,000 emails from this guy in his entire neighborhood saying, why'd you screw him? Why'd you help him when you screwed over a whole bunch of other people? But I don't think any of us had that full package. Do you know what the case is on that special request?
Yes, we do, Commissioners. Actually, and I've had a chance to talk to several of you in reference to this. The permit's actually issued to the business owner, to the business name. So he bought the business, he bought the name. And I think there's certain situations where it makes sense to go ahead and transfer that commercial permit because it's good for the whole year. What I wanted to make sure, and I clarified with some of you, is that it doesn't guarantee the issuance of a permit in the future as it would with others, because policy may change as you do your rate adjustments annually. You may want to reduce those permits, but that's down the road. So in this particular case, I see that as an opportunity to transfer that over.
I think that's what maybe we had hoped to hear, but we got to make sure that that's supportable to the 30 people who might send you an email in the next 15 minutes, all saying, wow, I had a special case, and I put a picture of my family, and it was my dad, and I don't think any of us have visibility into those, because I know Mr. Rodriguez, you and the Parks and Rec leadership handled a lot of those internally. So good to hear that this one was a special case, and that if somebody comes back to you who thought they were a special case and didn't get the same ruling, that you feel like the previous decisions will hold up because they were different.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm hearing from you.
And thanks to you and our county manager, you've helped us kind of rein this program in so that we have a limit, we have a cap, and now that we're going to right-size that with each different ramp, because some ramps don't require 30 vendors showing up on one day.
And that's a big thing that I've been talking with Parks and Rec, because a lot of these marinas are in District 1, that this might be the time to look at specific permits for specific marinas, rather than just, wow, we sold 200. I wonder where all these vendors are going to go. And then, and then the answer is, they all went to Caxambas, and oh God, it's too late now to change their permits. So we got to do this smarter. And it sounds like we are. Commissioner Saunders.
I think I just need to say this for the record. That is actually my stepson now. And so I did have a meeting with Mr. Rodriguez yesterday where we talked about these permits, but did not mention Jeffrey Delaney at all, because I didn't want there to appear to be any influence on my part. So I didn't say anything to anybody. So I'm glad that the board brought it up, and glad that there was a consensus to do that. But I can't participate in the nodding of, yeah, let's do that. I'm abstaining from that nod because of that. But I just want the record to reflect that there was no influence from me in reference to this.
Still a pretty family.
Right. I've got 3 things to close on. A lot of times on the consent agenda, we sometimes all the time, we approve a whole bunch of things with one vote. But there's things that are buried in there that are really good news stories, and I think we've all done a great job that when we've seen those, I think previous groups that were up here would pull stuff off the consent agenda more often than not because it was something bad. Oh, we're not going to just blindly approve it. We're going to talk about it for 12 hours. And that wasn't maybe horrible. But I've seen us over the last, whatever, how many months, we've all taken a chance to pull something off at times to talk about it, to not only make sure citizens know that there was something embedded in there that was a good news story, but sometimes it doesn't need to be pulled off. And I talked with Ms. Patterson about this yesterday and said, let's not pull this off. But I want to defer to her and have her give us sort of the short version of 3 things that were on the consent agenda that were good news stories for affordable housing. There again, to steal some words from Commissioner Saunders, where he says, everybody thinks we're not doing anything. Yeah, we're doing more than a couple of things, and some of them hurt, but some of them are hurt because they're long overdue. But 16 D1, D2, and D3 were some really good things that helped take another little piece. It didn't solve anything, 100%, but it continues to march us down the line. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us that, in case you missed it, those 3 things in the consent agenda, what they did when we voted unanimously for them.
Yep. 16D1 is their ship partnership agreements, providing $250,000 to one group and $500,000 to another group for construction of rental housing in Immokalee. 16D2 is it's actually a clarification of an existing agreement, but the important part about that, it's part of the HOME program that provides for funding for infrastructure for affordable housing developments. This one also was providing some extra time due to the impacts of Hurricane Ian. And then the last one is another ship agreement. This one is in reference to rehabilitation, including roofing repairs and replacements, and again for affordable housing, people that qualify for that type of funding. So again, that's working class people. So that's over $1 million, almost $1.8 million in assistance to help rehabilitate houses.
Okay, thank you. The second thing is for Mr. Klatskow. So last time we were here, we approved unanimously a resolution for liens and fines to tighten things up a bit and all that. I just wanted to ensure we launched that out to all the right county staff members, the code enforcement board, everybody. So is that a correct statement? Do you believe
We're in the
everybody has a
process.
copy in front of them?
We are in the process of doing that, yes.
Okay. And then whenever the next code enforcement board is, I think the conversation we had is somebody from your office that normally would be in there to not miss the opportunity to not just give everybody a copy,
No, I will
but
be
to
there.
summarize. Okay. And then lastly, I wanted the commissioners to know, I didn't put them on this email, but I'm happy to send it to you as one-way communication. But yesterday I sent a large email out about I-75 litter to every FDOT person I could think of, to every county staff member that cares. And it was on behalf of all of us. I didn't want to get into this, hey, we're all on it, so sunshine laws. I'm
All
sorry.
our staff cares.
Yeah, everybody cares. Well, it was the staff that actually, are in regular contact with FDOT, but I think it represented what we all feel and what we see on emails. I-75 has never looked worse. And so I've had to confirm for citizens that I-75 is the responsibility of FDOT, but we work closely with them. Although at times our own staff has helped plug some holes on I-75 and in some surrounding roads, picking up large pieces of debris. But in that email, I outlined what I thought, but I think you all would agree that the reason why I-75 looks so bad is multiple different things. Number one, we heard it in here during the MPO meetings that a while ago that FDOT lost their contractor. Then they sort of were in between contractors, and now they have one, but the contractor's not doing that great. And I also believe, regardless of the contractor that they have now, if they're policing I-75 the way the previous contractors did it several years ago, that's another reason why we have a problem, because there's a lot more litter out there now post-hurricane, and I'll even say post-COVID, and I'll explain why, and it's something that you might not have thought of. But so it's the FDOT contractor. Number two, Waste Management will tell you we're picking up more garbage in bins on the curbsides every 2 weeks than we've ever picked up before. Now, why is that? A lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is people are still cleaning out their garages from the hurricane. They have a contractor who's working in their house and is putting some of the drywall possibly out by the curb, or some of the debris from boxes that they just got new appliances or what have you. But it's a fact that Waste Management vehicles are picking up the largest amount of litter, of debris that they ever have been. So how does that litter I-75? Well, I personally have gotten emails from people that say, I see your giant Waste Management trucks making a beeline for the landfill, and stuff's just blowing out of all of them. And it's because they're packed to the gills. So that's number two. Number three, we have a lot of contractors in this area that are doing hurricane repairs and are driving all over I-75. Some of them have their loads covered, some of them don't. Some of them have a cover, but the trucks are overloaded. So I've even watched stuff, blow out of it, buckets, pieces of materials, and those sort of things. And then I put in that letter, the fourth reason is, and it is part of COVID, there were a lot of organizations and volunteers that kept Collier beautiful. We have a program, Keep Collier Beautiful. You can sign up in your Rotary Club, your Boy Scout troop, all these different things. What I hear from people that manage that program is during COVID, a lot of that support obviously disappeared. Then we rolled right in a Hurricane Ian, and people were more focused on, the damage they had than going out every other week and picking up trash. A lot of those organizations, because of COVID and Ian, basically dissolved. So there's signs still up saying, a certain organization has adopted this highway. They haven't been out there in years. And not that they were the primary litter picker-uppers, but when you add FDOT's contract that's maybe a little loose, trucks that are blowing stuff all over the highway, and then Keep Collier Beautiful is maybe the least strong it's ever been. But the bottom line is something has to be done. So my closing argument, and I'll forward this email to you all. I wanted to send out the first salvo to FDOT. I got no reply from anybody. I got read receipts from everybody, and I even said, I'm not saying I got the solution, but we have to come up with something. And if it's everybody throw money in the pot and bring in more contractors, but I personally, as you all have, but even just the other day, drove from exit 1 all the way almost to Sarasota. And it's not just Collier County. It's not like it stops at our county line and Lee County all of a sudden did something magical and it's, flawless. It is a total mess. Hats off to our county staff, because if you go into interior roads that are our responsibility, they're not great in some areas. But boy, I see a lot more activity out there. I see a lot more of our county vehicles out there trying to at least sort of hold our own when it comes to litter. But when you drive by I-75, my last point is what I said in this letter is it's more than paper and tin cans. Now it is very large. It's couches, it's chairs, it's giant buckets, it's construction material, and it sits there for an extensive period of time. So, Ms. Patterson, I don't know if at your level you can take that email, and I wanted to just generate not just conversation, a solution. I mean, we move money around all the time. Is this something we all need to throw some money at and get some people out there and not just, send the random truck out because we saw a ladder in the middle of the road? I mean, Miss Trinity has done a great job responding to these emergent things. Hey, there's a ladder sitting in the middle of I-75, and then somebody moved it over to the shoulder, and then it sat on the shoulder for 2 months. And then finally, instead of kicking the can, somebody went out there with a county vehicle and moved it, but it didn't actually fix the litter problem. Trinity, what can you tell us? What do we need? What can we do?
I got my steps in for the day. I just want you all to know that. Next time I'm gonna wear more comfortable shoes. Once again, for the record, Trinity Scott, I actually have a meeting out in the field with the vendor next week. Based on the conversations we've had at the MPO, and that I'm constantly thumping them, they reached out and said, hey, can we go out? I said, absolutely, but we're not gonna meet in my office. We're gonna go out in the field. So I'm gonna go out, take them around, show them where the areas are, drive them up and down I-75. Some of FDOT has a maintenance rating program that discusses what's allowable from a litter standpoint. During any given time, the clear zone has to be clear, the shoulders are supposed to be clear of obstructions, and of course the travel lanes. Otherwise, they're allowed 3 cubic yards per acre of litter per their contract. That's just a statewide maintenance rating program. I've reached out to Wayne Gaither as well from the Florida Department of Transportation, asking them if it was something that they could subsidize the contracts to have a more robust litter removal. I've asked him to schedule a meeting with me to where we can talk about different funding strategies for that. There's, consistently for us in Collier County, we always yell at FDOT that we don't receive our fair share of funding. So I'm sure that they could probably scrape together some money to subsidize that contract if necessary. So those are some of the things that I'm working on behind the scenes to try to address the issue.
I mean, you saw, and you were on that email I sent out, and I ended it by saying, regardless of whose responsibility it is, this is the front door to Collier County, and it's horrible. And even if the metrics show that they're within their 3 cubic yards of acceptable trash, I think we all compare it to how it looked. So they must have been grossly exceeding in a positive way over these many, many years, because I've never seen it this bad. So if this is still in the window of acceptability, then they were doing an awesome job previously. And to catch up to even somewhere in the middle of that, it can't be business as usual. One of the things that I did hear from FDOT a couple of weeks ago is, yeah, we'll do a better job getting our contractor out there. And they basically sort of implied to the levels that they've always been out there. The pendulum is so far to the nth degree that's not going to make a dent. This reminds me of the rock crushing lot. We're bringing more litter to I-75 than we're picking up. We're not just trying to catch up. We're trying to get on the other side of it. There'll always be paper. There'll always be cans, but it is so excessive, and I don't know how many more people need to remind us of that. So, anything that we can do here, and if it's a problem that Collier County is, maybe, the old adage, well, we don't own FDOT. I know, but that's our front door. We don't own I-75, but that's our front door. So if they're too lazy or can't figure it out, or this is, too difficult for them and they're going to come up with a solution in November, then I think we take the lead and figure out how to do it and, come up with some sort of solution. So obviously you're talking to the right people, and I know we all feel very similar to that, because I'm embarrassed when I drive on I-75. It's not anywhere near to where it's ever been.
I think getting them out and having them put eyes on what we're seeing. I know that in the past, Amy and I've done that with Secretary Nandem, where we've told him, go drive down US 41, and you tell me that that's acceptable to you. So when we force that issue, then we start seeing some results.
I'm
So
disappointed that I would think that they have driven it, and they probably have, but they haven't done it with you. So it's a lot different when you're together. So I applaud that. Commissioner McDaniel.
As you're going through the contract process and a viable solution that has worked and we use it regularly in Immokalee, consult with the sheriff about our prison force. If we're going to put money at something, we can maybe work a deal with the sheriff's department to utilize low-risk prisoners that can get time knocked off their sentence by doing community service work, and reimburse the sheriff for that additional expense. We do it in Immokalee with I call them the weekend warriors that stay at the stockade, and Christy Benacourt over there, she's the eyes and ears on the ground. She talks with the sheriff's department with regard to streets that have an excess amount of trash, and boom, they're out and they get it. They have a trailer, they have a guard. It's very well maintained and organized, and it is site specific. And so, and it could be, rather than us paying a third-party contractor, we could pay our sheriff's department an additional fee, at least commensurate to what a third-party contractor would be, get some community benefit out of it at the same time. So that's something that we are doing already, and it is a solution to the circumstance.
And I think in the past where maybe you're seeing that different level of service specifically on I-75 is in the past, FDOT did utilize FHP services to have state prisoners out, augmenting that contract, and that has ceased. But in my conversations with Wayne, that's some of the additional information I'd like to find out from Wayne, why that's not being used. Is there a cost benefit? Is it something that they can put some additional funding towards FHP, or is it something that they're just not interested in? And then perhaps it's something with Sheriff Rambosk that he may be interested in.
As the chairman said, I mean, it's the gateway to our community. First thing people see when they come in, the last thing they see as they're going out, depending on which direction. So especially along I-75, and that's the hot spot today. But next week it'll be on Livingston Road, or it'll be Collier Boulevard, or whatever the case is. And if we're managing it from a local standpoint, utilizing, we always have the DOT's support theoretically and the contractor theoretically, but meeting that 1 cubic yard per mile or whatever they utilize as an acceptable amount isn't acceptable for us. And so I would explore that as much as is feasibly possible, and within the realm of the of the sheriff, of course. He has to have the personnel and but.
I'll take great pride in challenging FDOT.
Well, one thing I'll add about if we use the sheriff, or if it's state troopers or what have you, to Commissioner McDaniel's point, if it's low risk folks who are not looking to empty out our jails, because some of the feedback I had heard from law enforcement, I'll just say, I don't want to tag this on any particular name, but when I had sort of explored this was, wow, every person in uniform is extremely valuable. Sitting there and guarding somebody that's holding a hefty bag isn't the best use of our law enforcement, and I don't disagree. But if we've got sort of, if there is a prisoner force that is low risk, just overseers could be hired. They don't need to be state troopers. They don't need to be sheriffs that are pulled off of law enforcement. It could be that FDOT beefs up their crews, and we give them a little bit of free labor, and it's some sort of, combination of both. Because the pushback that I immediately heard was, police are too valuable and we're already shorthanded, and watching prisoners pick up trash. Okay, well, it doesn't necessarily need to be an armed officer if it's low risk people, or maybe it's one armed officer out there and then it's a bunch of augmentees who are making sure. I also did hear a safety type thing. Like you said, maybe they were doing it in the past. I don't know if someone got hit by a car or something happened, and I think it predates my dozen years here in Collier County, but someone might have been using that as a you know, an excuse, but it might not have been. It might have had merit that, hey, we used to have people walking. But if we have Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs walking up and down the road, and, you know, I don't think we've had any tragic accidents, you know, I just think that's a cop-out, and the roads are way too bad now for us to just ignore it or throw 1 or 2 extra bodies at it or 1 or 2, you know, extra trips every 3 months. It's way past that window. So anyway, we've exhausted the conversation. I just want to, please keep us posted.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yes, sir.
They do have a program called the Weekend Work Program, and it's not people that are actually incarcerated. I mean, when you put incarcerated people out there are responsibilities, so we have to have some sort of
It's
care
like
and
someone who got a
control over it.
DUI or something like
It's
that,
if
right?
you're on like county probation, you're not actually incarcerated. You're serving out a 6-month probation or a year probation. They have a work weekend program. It's part of the stipulation of their probation. And in the past, the sheriffs they wrangle these guys up on a Saturday and a Sunday. They have the buses. You can actually see them, the white buses that are parked just on the other side of the parking lot over there by the DJJ. And they do have the trailers, they have the equipment and to go out. And these are very, very low risk because they're people that aren't incarcerated. They're just serving out their community service hours, you know,
They must not be
to their
doing it now,
probation.
right?
I don't know, like they used to do it when I was there, and it used to be an overtime gig for some of the correction guys to do it on the weekend, you know, and they made a few extra bucks to hang out there with them. But just putting actual inmates out there, we do have a care and custody control issue with that. Do we have to have particularly armed people? Because they are a responsibility, because they are in our care and custody, but that's a lower risk type deal that they're doing it on. They want to do it because they're trying to get off probation quicker.
Absolutely.
So they're motivated to go out on the weekends, and maybe we can visit that. And like Judge Janice Martin was here today, I know she's had some things like that in her programs in the past. So it may be something we can look into. That's, you know, through probation and the sheriff's department.
Absolutely will do. Those are actually, they are out in our local community, on our local roads. I don't believe that they've been out on I-75. But we're going to be creative with the solution. We're going to sit down, I'm going to sit down with FDOT, and like I said, I'll challenge them to come up with multiple solutions, and we'll try to get at it
Sooner
multiple
than later.
fronts.
You know, if they're waiting for the A+ solution that's going to come in November, you know, I'd rather see us take up smaller chunks of the apple and at least try to make a dent somewhere, rather than, you know, they're going to have 11 meetings and then figure out in 2024 how we're going to attack this better. That's not the direction we're given. So I appreciate it. Okay, any closing comments?
Just one other thing, high school students have to do 100 hours of volunteer
Seems like 100.
Get those.
to qualify for their Florida Bright Future Scholarship, so that's another resource.
Okay. Anybody? Adjourned. Thank you.